What's up, everyone? Welcome to today's video. Welcome to the Gamer Dad channel. Thank you very much for tuning in. So just recently I went back to play the Division 1 a little bit. It was a really fun time. I played about 30 minutes. 28 minutes and 27 seconds specifically is what my footage is showing, because I recorded that clip of just walking around the world, doing some settings and just taking everything in. As I was doing so, something crossed my mind and I thought to myself, I wonder if it's going to be possible for Ubisoft Massive to take the Division 1 and the Division 2 and make an offline version of both games. And there are benefits to this that not necessarily only pertain to us, the players, but I also think the developers themselves, because the reality is this game requires a server component, or both games, not just the Division 1 and the Division 2, require a server component in order for them to be able to function properly. There are reasons that this was the case. I don't think in the case of Division it was just out of the necessity for the developers to go offline. I think there were technical limitations, and this is because Frederick Thylander did mention that there were technical difficulties, or at least there were technical limitations. I wouldn't say difficulties. Let me say limitations that prevented them from making the game to run offline for at least a portion of the game itself. Let's go ahead and look at the pertaining issues before we jump into this conversation, because if we don't do that, it's going to pretty much be wishful thinking that ignores the prevailing evidence that's out there. This is going to give us a better perspective as to how we can walk through or think through this particular conversation. So during the unveiling or release of Outriders, there were conversations going on around this. Frederick Thylander, many of you know, is a gameplay developer at Ubisoft Massive. He's worked on the Division 1 and 2. He was lead gameplay designer, or is lead gameplay designer, on the Star Wars Outlaws project. And he is actually very well known in the Division community for being the lead 3C developer for the Division 1, and I think also possibly the Division 2. I don't know if he got more responsibility by the Division 2, possibly. But in that, context, he said this. He said, reminder, a game forcing online even for single player might actually, use the servers to run part of the game. Devs couldn't just allow offline. The game wouldn't run. It will have been optimized to the point where the console couldn't also run the server parts. Now, there's a lot going on here, but if I continue this conversation, you'll get exactly where we're going, because this statement might sound a little bit off the cuff. So Youngye, YouTuber, asked and said, out of genuine curiosity, what is the logic behind a game like Outriders being built in such a way that even its single-player component requires online? Why choose to construct a game that way when it could potentially be restrictive for players? Now, this is a good question. At first, I used to always think that this question was kind of, misguided, but I understand now that many people have that concern because of preservation, being able to hold a game. And, I'm not against that. I would hate to lose a game that I bought because the server, got shut down or whatever. But Frederick said this. He said, I didn't make Outriders, of course, so I can only speak for the pretty similar game I did help make, The Division. You do it because you can run more. The 2013 laptop CPU that is in an Xbox One or PS4 isn't too capable, so you run heavy things like raycasting and AI on a server. And that way, you can let the console do more things: better graphics, better animations, better physics and destruction. You can do a larger world because the server can hold the whole thing in memory, while the console only has to care about the local part. This becomes, and he continues, specifically relevant when you want to share that world. In The Division, I can shoot something in East Manhattan and you can shoot something in West Manhattan, and then we can both cross to each other's sides and the loot remains because the server has it. This is a very well put, I would say, explanation as to why The Division specifically is a game that is designed with the online in mind. Now, what's crazy nonetheless is there's a possibility to have also done the game offline to have the capability for you to be able to then log in to an online server and still achieve the same results. However, you would have the console have to hold more of that information. And when the console has to hold more than, that information that is pertinent, you would require a console or machine that has way more performance, and the PS4 and Xbox One just did not have that capability. In fact, a more recent example of a video game that suffered from this particular challenge because of the way it was built is Gotham Knights. Gotham Knights is a game that has a co-op portion of the game as well as a single player. However, the single player portion of the game is offline. You can turn your game's internet off or Wi-Fi, and you can play the full game offline. The world, the characters, AI, everything is actually loaded in there. I specifically also use Gotham Knights because it does have a similar gameplay loop to The Division, where enemy NPCs are carrying out activities in different parts of the world, and as you're conquering them, they respawn after a timer. Now, you have to reset the timer in Gotham Knights by traveling to your base of operations and doing all that stuff, but the game is designed just like The Division. However, the game was promised to come on the PS4 and Xbox One, but that never happened, and I'm certain in my mind that those consoles could not hold the game. In fact, when the game made its way to the Series X and the PS5, it was locked to 30 FPS on console, while on PC, you could play it at 60 FPS. I wonder what other game was locked to 30 FPS on console, while on PC, you could play it at 60 FPS. The Division. Now, yes, the PS4 and the Xbox One probably could not have been able to pull 60 FPS for that game, but even Gotham Knights itself, because of the limitations of the CPU in the Series X, could not maintain a 60 FPS regular frame rate. I'm not making this claim in a vacuum. I'm actually making this claim based on the research that was done and the testing done by Digital Foundry when they used a Series X desktop kit, which is pretty much the same CPU and motherboard that is in the Series X, that was eventually used to make desktop kits in China only. They got their hands on one of them. They slapped some RAM, a GPU, and a bunch of games, and were able to test what it would look like if you remove the GPU limitations from an Xbox Series X. They used this and ran multiple tests on different games, including Gotham Knights, which was able to at least reach somewhere around 52 to 54 FPS, but that is not a frame time standard that you want to publish a game with. And even though the game hit 60 FPS and went past 60 FPS in some cases, it made sense that if they were not going to be able to maintain that target, that they lock it to 30 FPS because of the way the game's world is built, a massive open world that is being held on the local machine. Even though the Series X is better than the Xbox One and the PS5 is better than the PS4, these limitations are there. So it is pertinent that we know this when we're mentioning this particular conversation with the Division game, because there are people who own the game and own the game on the PlayStation 4. They may not have moved to the PS5 yet. And I think this is where the biggest limitation will be, because I strongly believe that the way the Division 1 was built, it is possible that the Xbox Series X and the PS5 can actually hold the world of the Division offline at 60 FPS if they actually go back and modify, say, some parameters like streaming and so on and so forth. Also, the AI density on the Division game in the Division 1 is not as much as the Division 2. I don't think this would happen with the Division 2, but you never know. The Division 2 was also launched on the PS4 and the Xbox One. So these limitations were in mind while designing these two video games. So I think overall, this is where the big challenge is going to be when it comes to making the choice of maybe putting the game offline at the end of the day. If you think about it, the developers who've made this game, they understand the challenge. They understand the reality that one day, this game that they've worked on so hard is going to eventually disappear into oblivion. And even this Frederick Thalander's conversation here really does reflect that reality, when somebody actually responded and said, I would prefer that, the game does some stuff and, so on and so forth. And somewhere along the lines, he replied and said, it's also very challenging for developers because a game you work on that is in your portfolio may one day no longer be a thing that exists. But one other good thing, too, is we have YouTube, we have videos, and we're able to pretty much hold records and documentation of the fact that these games actually did exist. But it would be nice if more people could eventually play it down the road, because after the servers, they are accessible. Thanks for watching the video. I appreciate you guys' time and audience. Let me hear your thoughts in the comment section about all of this, and hopefully we can talk pretty soon in another one. Peace out.